our accountability tracker. Do this for 30 days. Get your 3 hours in the morning from 4:30 to 7:30 in the morning. Get to hang out with your family, do community work, your friends in the evening, do all the other commitments. 430psycho.com will get you to everything. If you're seeing this later, this was filmed live today. It's January 11th. I'm still in London, so there might be a delay. I got one more day, and then I'll be back in the States. Good morning, guys. How's it going?
Good morning.
Good morning. How's it going? Good.
The Accountability Club. So, I was thinking last night about Rob Commadori. You and in a few times you've talked about, God, we were just talking about it.
Imposter syndrome.
Imposter syndrome. I'm sorry. It's an interesting thing, imposter syndrome. Where can you how did that manifest itself? How did imposter syndrome, were you having internal discussions in your head, like I don't deserve this success kind of thing?
Well, let's talk about what it is first. So the imposter syndrome is more like it's called an insecurity, a fear that you don't think you're good enough. You don't think you're smart enough. You don't think, like in writing a book, like who's going to want to read my stuff, right? So like I say, you can call it an insecurity, you can call it a fear. But like here, I'm a kid, one of 7 kids, inner city boy, wasn't good at English, wasn't good at writing. I hated all that stuff. And I'm writing a book. So it was a roadblock for a while. Because look, I wanted to write the book. I wrote a goal to write the book in 2001. I sat down in 2005 and I wrote the first chapter and I put it aside. I said, there's no way anybody's going to want to read this stuff. And then I picked it up in 2009, wrote another chapter, felt the same way in 2014. I wrote 2 chapters and I kept putting it down. I'm like, who the hell do I think I am? So, so then it's like, part of getting over it was like, screw it, I'm just doing it, right? That's part of it. And the other thing is, when writing a book, I'm like, who am I writing a book for? I'm worried about what all these people are going to think. And I'm like, that's bullcrap. Just write it. I wrote it for an audience of one, myself, to share with others. And that was like the push through thing. Get over it. Don't worry about what other people think. This is something you want to accomplish. Just go do it. And that's kind of how I broke through it. And it's kind of the conversations I had in my head.
So you were like, after you wrote that first chapter, you were having internal conversation, like, this was it like, because it obviously after writing a book, you realize what a process it is. And at the very beginning, it's easy to be like, wow, this is going to be very tough. Like, can I keep going? I know when I wrote my first one, it took 2 years. And many times I was like, oh God, like, how important is this? But it took me about 3 months to get through, like, do I have some valuable information to share? But that's not why I wanted to stop. I just wanted to stop because it's difficult. It's difficult to keep, it's a compound effect. You got to keep on beating on it and working on it. But so each time you got back to it, you were questioning.
Yeah. I mean, Ron, it was an up and down roller coaster, because there was times like, yeah, this is good stuff, man. I got this. This is awesome. And then I'm like, maybe not. And Ron, I had been through several edits, 14 to be exact. And it was about ready to be published. And one day I looked at my wife and I said, I'm talking like, this is just like 2 months before it was published. And I looked at my wife, I said, you know what? I accomplished what I want to accomplish. I don't know that I want to put this out there. And she goes, are you kidding me? And what was that all about? So even up to that point, I still had the really, am I that good enough to say, hey, I'm an author? Who am I to think that, right? And so, but then, at that point it was done. My wife's like, you've done this much, you're putting it out there. So, it's a roller coaster ride. It is. And even the, some of your famous authors go through it. They do.
Yeah. I had an agent that worked for us that we were at a conference that I had spoken at earlier. And then this speaker was doing this thing, and one of the guys on my team raised his hand, and he wanted this guy Jason Hewlett wrote this book, The Promise, and Jake raised his hand and basically said that he had this imposter syndrome about his success. That he didn't feel like he deserved it, and that he was going to promise to work through that. And I was shocked. It came out of nowhere because I mean I think it was like roughly 600 people, and he raised his hand. They brought the microphone over to him, and he laid it out there. It was something he had kept private for a while. So it's a interesting sort of all the different kind of mental roadblocks that you can deal with. That's a really intriguing one where you're questioning. I mean, I did it for 3 months with my book. I felt like, it took me 3 months to be like, okay, I think we got to 500 transactions a lot differently than other people, a lot different than the common ways that people are taught how to do this, So then I was like, but I wanted to quit because it's just such a hard process.
Yeah, and it's not just about writing a book either. I mean, it's, like you said, if somebody had a huge, maybe it's just a speaker. A speaker could be up there delivering a great message and think, man, who am I to think I can deliver this message? Who am I to think that I can provide value to these people? So it could be success as a speaker, a writer, in business, whatever it is. And it's just something that it's humbling. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. The funny thing at the end of writing a book, you turn it in and then you find 20 things that you want to change. And then your editor is like, okay, we'll do this one time. And, so you change like 20 things. And then there's these little lingering things that you wanted to change. And then you send it, and you're like, hey, wait, I got to send this edit. And, but yeah, it's definitely humbling. I mean, it's a roller coaster, emotional roller coaster, certainly. When mine came out, my first one, Create Demand and Stop Chasing Business, stayed on the Kindle version of it on Amazon Real Estate, was #1 for like 7 months. So that's where you're like, you feel like, okay, yeah, that was worth it. So
that's great. I think mine hit Amazon #1 in 2 categories for an hour.
You're still #1, man.
Yeah, it was great. And then I wrote a chapter, another book, which was Amazon #1 in 31 different categories, which was pretty cool. I mean, it wasn't anything like writing a whole book. I wrote a chapter, but you still go through it. Yeah, so I was
writing.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
No, go.
I was going to say, like you said, writing a book. I've written the books I've written so that I go super deep on concepts that I implement into my own, that I'm working on my business, but then it really forces me. And as I'm interviewing other people that are masters at doing things, I educate myself deep enough so that I can also share that information. So it's like 60% for me, 40% for sharing these good ideas in a way that is easy to read and quick bites.
Yeah, so everybody has, I guess, a different purpose or reason for writing. Like you're providing content and information for people, and for me, I wanted to share it with others, but it was just like it's something I felt that was inside of me. I just got to get out. I just got to get it out and share it. So it's interesting. There'll be another one. I think there'll be another one.
Ron, Rob, you guys ever think you'll write a book?
No, I was just looking at the cover of yours again. I remember going through it. I don't know. I never really thought about sitting down and writing it, but I mean, it makes sense. You were outlining the way that the reason that you decided, to do it initially and to go through it.
Which one? The profitability and performance steps?
That's the only one. I didn't look at the other one, but I'll check that one out.
It's such a journey writing, especially the second book comes a lot easier. That book is like 4 times the size of the first book, but I wrote during COVID. It's an interesting process. I think all of us have a book in us, and it's just finding that niche of very unique things that we do very well, that you can share very short story to get to a really powerful concept. If you have 5 or 6 or 7 ideas or concepts that you can set up with an interesting story, that good book.
Yeah.
There's a formula to it as well. So
Yeah, Ron, that's exactly how I did mine. I had the story, a concept, a lesson, and how it can apply to you. And it was exactly what I went through. I tell you what, it's a hard journey, but it was a fun journey. I totally love the idea that that's something big for me that I accomplished. So it was huge. And like you said, everybody's got a book inside of them. It's just a matter if they want to or not. And then the other side of it is they say, I think 85% of people who say they want to write a book won't write it. And in some sense, you could say it's a shame, because just put it out there, man. You don't have to sit there and say, I'm going to write a book to be a bestseller and sell millions of copies, because that just doesn't happen to everybody. And
I got invited after my first book. I got invited out to Utah, Workman Success thing, and there's a bunch of great speakers there at this 3-day event, and I was speaking on the last day, and first time I'd spoken to a crowd. Wasn't really my greatest, but I didn't care. I really didn't care. But anyways, what was I saying here? So every great speaker, and I met probably about a dozen great speakers at that event. Every single one of them said, I'm working on a book, or I always wanted to write a book, or because they all want books for business cards. Like these great speakers all want to be able to have a book that they send out or whatever, and not one of them has written a book. And I mean, amazing speakers. Actually, one of them, but just like you said, it's a very small percentage of people. Where I was the opposite. I wasn't a speaker. I just felt like I had some really good information to share.
Yeah, and like you said, they want to use it as a business card. There is a credibility piece behind it. It is. I mean, they call it social proof, credibility, whatever. Like when I go on listing appointments, I take books with me. And and so I'll sit there, I'll finish the listing appointment, and I'll sit there and say, hey, by the way, are you a reader? And if they say yes, I said, well, I have something for you. I usually bring it as a gift to any prospective client, and then I'll pull out the book, and then they're like, that's pretty cool, and they start asking you questions, and so then it deepens that connection a little more, and so it helps.
Yeah, I haven't had the initial. I haven't really thought about it, or had necessarily the desire to write a book, but I can imagine for you guys that there's got to be a pretty high level of fulfillment. I get fulfilled by doing other things, but I can only imagine I have a difficult enough time completing, a couple of different books a month, let alone putting my thoughts together and doing what you guys have done. So, but is there a certain level of fulfillment upon not just doing the initial work, but the completion of it? Like what type of fulfillment do you have from that?
Go ahead, Ron. I have my thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, you get fulfillment. For me, I don't like promoting books. I like people to find them through search and through referrals, and so it's fulfilling, but it passes, and then it just is. It's just okay. I've written a couple books, but I don't there's people that write books and they go speaking about all these books and all that kind of stuff.
Well, you've mentioned scarcity. I know that through the challenge, you've talked about scarcity. I appreciate that, because you're not just providing it just to promote yourself. It ends up when people find it, just like you were saying, through researching like what they're looking for, like, oh, this book, Ron Howard, and not knowing you, possibly not knowing you, and like that may really turn the knob on like what they're looking for, or possibly helping them, whether it's personally or professionally.
Well, I do get 2 or 3 messages a month from people that have read one of those books that have a question, or say, hey, thanks, that really hit me hard, or because the beginning of my last book that Ron was talking about, I really make fun of people that have the volume success but make very little money, and there's a lot of people like that in our business. So I get a lot of those people reaching out like, man, I got the Diamond Club, which is an award that says you made $1 million, right? But that's the gross amount. And this one guy had reached out a few months ago, and he had taken home like 70 grand, which, 70 grand is not horrible, but so he gets, he's on stage with this award that, everybody sees him as like this made $1 million. But at the end of the day, with all your expenses and everything, he took home 70 grand and he barely can pay his bills, and that's our business, right? We all like that, the accolades and the awards and all these kinds of things, but they don't really give you the real picture of the expense side of our business and how you get to that volume. So I think that resonates a lot with people. So that's fulfilling.
Yeah. So for me, Rob, it was definitely fulfilling. I don't know, Ron, I don't know how you felt when you first, I got that first shipment of books, right? So I get the first shipment. I mean, I bought 400 books of my own. So the first 400 books that were sold were my purchase. So but I was going to give them away. But I remember opening the box, man. I opened the box and I saw the book, and it was emotional for me. It was definitely emotional for me. And it was very fulfilling. And they tell you that you got to, the first, that first day, that first week, put it out there. So you want to get the views up, and then you got to go, which was very hard to do, is asking for reviews. They say, go ask for a review, and somebody reads it, asking for a review. And it wasn't something I'd like to do or I enjoyed doing, but it helps. I mean, look, you should get reviews in your business on Google and Yahoo. I mean, on Google and Zillow and all that. But anyway, the fulfilling piece is definitely a huge part. There's no question about it. And then when somebody calls you up, I had a lady call me up and she said, Rob, I got my husband here. He hasn't read a complete book in 58 years, and he read your complete book and totally enjoyed it. That's when you get calls like that or notes like that.
Was your book industry specific, or was it just about another? What was your subject?
It's really a personal growth and development book. It's life kind of book. So if you see that, it's the cover behind me, and you see the grit and the grind. I bought those things to remind me how much of a grind it was. And you got to have grit to get through it. Right. And but it's in that personal growth thing. It's more life kind of spiritual kind of thing is what I would say. But so it's very fulfilling.
Well, guys, we went kind of long today, so I'm gonna wrap this up. But we'll see you tomorrow. My last day in London, and back to normal.
Good stuff.
Okay, man.
All right. Enjoy it.